Jinwoo and the Ant King stood face to face, the tension thick enough to crush the air. The monstrous insect, still running on the high of its previous victories, sized him up, sensing something dangerous about this human. "You have quite a threatening presence, human," the Ant King muttered, voice deep and eerie. It then released an intense roar. Jinwoo smirked, completely unfazed. "Now you're behaving more like an insect." Then, in an instant, we're thrown 5 minutes into the past. The broadcast of the raid had been cut off, leaving the world in chaos. Jinwoo's old teammates, watching from afar, felt the unease creeping in. What happened to the hunters? What was with that ant just now? The whole of Korea exploded with questions, people demanding answers. What the hell? They can't just end the broadcast there. What's going on? Then suddenly, a news anchor appeared on the screen, visibly shaken. "Ah, this just in." His voice was tense as he delivered the breaking news. Byung-gu was dead. The fate of the remaining hunters was unknown. No one could confirm if anyone had made it out alive. And then a pause. A flicker of something different in the reporter's expression. "We've just received word that an unknown hunter has just appeared at the scene of the battle. We will now resume live coverage of the raid." The internet broke. Meanwhile, in Japan, the news was already spreading through the upper ranks. The Japanese Hunter Association chairman, Matsumoto Shigeo, was livid. An ant that can speak the human language? And on top of that, it killed Goto. His rage was barely contained. Where is that monster? One of his subordinates hesitated before answering. "It has returned to the Queen's chamber." Matsumoto, already fuming, narrowed his eyes. "Are you telling me the South Korean team is still alive?" "Yes, sir. It appears so. And we're also picking up even more mana signals, coming from another being. For God's sake, turn on the TV." At the same time, in Jinwoo's home, his mother struggled with the television, frustrated. Jina walked in, confused. "Mom, what are you doing?" "The TV stopped working all of a sudden," she muttered, fiddling with the remote. Jina wasn't listening anymore. She had just seen something. She bolted to her room, heart racing. Her mother, bewildered, watched her go. Both of them are all over the place today. Meanwhile, Go Gun-hee, chairman of the Korean Hunter Association, stared at the broadcast, his hands gripping the desk. He recognized that figure immediately. That's Sung Jinwoo. His assistant, seeing his reaction, panicked. "Mr. Go, please calm down." But he wasn't listening. All eyes were now on the screen. Back on Jeju Island, Jinwoo versus the Ant King had begun. The ant threw the first punch, its massive, clawed fist colliding straight into Jinwoo's face. The impact sent shockwaves through the chamber, dust and debris flying everywhere. Baek Yun-ho and Choi Jong-in, barely able to watch, felt their stomachs drop. A mage should never get so close to their enemy. Choi muttered, his voice uneasy. "I think he underestimated the ant's strength. He ended up getting hit in the face." The Ant King stood there, proud of itself. "You are weak. You must not be the king." But then the dust settled, and every single person watching dropped their jaw. Even the Ant King looked shook, because Jinwoo was standing there, completely unfazed. No damage, no reaction, just mild irritation. A single drop of blood trickled from his lip. He spat it out, looking at the insect like it had personally offended him. Then, he activated Commander's Touch. The Ant King's body instantly collapsed, forced to its knees under an unseen pressure. It struggled, mandibles clicking in disbelief. Jinwoo charged. And then boom. The Ant King was launched across the chamber, crashing into the wall at breakneck speed. The onlookers, still barely processing what had just happened, were completely speechless. Ma Dongwook, his voice shaky, turned to the others. "Coach Baek, Coach Choi, are you sure Sung is a mage-type hunter?" Baek Yun-ho, also in complete denial, muttered. "I knew he was powerful, but I never imagined he'd be this strong." The Ant King shook off the impact, getting back to its feet, rage seeping through its entire being. It let out another earth-shattering roar and charged. Jinwoo, already annoyed, cracked his fingers. The ant's body is pretty sturdy. Maybe it's because of the exoskeleton. How irritating. The Ant King swung both arms down, aiming to crush Jinwoo. But he caught them effortlessly with one hand. With his free hand, he drove his fist straight into the Ant King's ribs, forcing it to drop its guard. And then another bone-crushing punch landed straight to the face. The ant reeled back, then retaliated, managing to land another punch on Jinwoo. But the exchange was completely one-sided. Blow after blow, Jinwoo dominated the Ant King. It tried everything, but none of its attacks were working. Its hardened armor? Cracking. Its brute strength? Useless. The cameraman, barely holding onto his equipment, could barely form words. Wow, incredible. As an A rank, I can barely even stand up straight right now. I feel like I am about to pass out. The Ant King, still reeling from the barrage of attacks, started to panic. It was losing. For the first time in its life, it was completely overpowered. I'm losing a battle of strength? Jinwoo, unbothered, just kept wrecking it. The monster, barely able to think straight, felt something it had never felt before. Fear. Who the hell is this guy? The Ant King staggered back, barely able to process what just happened. His exoskeleton was shattered. That shouldn't have been possible. No creature had ever overpowered him before, but this human, no, this monster, had just broken through his armor like it was cheap plastic. Before he could even recover, Jinwoo closed the distance in an instant, his fist slamming into the cracked section with brutal force. The impact rippled through the entire chamber, sending shockwaves that shook the ground. Desperate, the Ant King retaliated. His needle-like tongue shot out at Jinwoo like a spear, aiming straight for his head. Jinwoo barely dodged in time, but the tip nicked his cheek, leaving a small wound. At first, it didn't seem like much, just a scratch. But then a sharp, burning pain spread through his body. He looked down. A purple stinger protruded from the wound. Poison. The Ant King had evolved past normal ants, consuming stronger creatures, adapting their powers. One of them had been a cone snail, meaning its venom wasn't just deadly. It was one of the most lethal neurotoxins on the planet. And now, enhanced by mana, it was even worse. The Ant King grinned, stepping forward like it had already won. You tried your best, human. Now die. Meanwhile, back at the Japanese team, or what's left of them at least, Kane Tawada felt something was seriously wrong. She turned to Minoru, who was still shaking like a leaf, his entire body trembling with fear. Minoru, I just got a call from Mr. Sugimoto. What the hell is going on? Minoru's breath was uneven, his hands clenched into fists. We can't win. That thing, it's not something humans can beat. Not even S ranks, not even all of us combined. His voice cracked. Mr. Goda couldn't, and neither can we. Kane grabbed him by the collar, anger flashing in her eyes. The hell are you talking about? Have you lost your damn mind? Minoru just kept shaking his head, muttering the same thing over and over. Nobody can stop that thing. Nobody. Kane shoved him away, disgusted. You're pathetic. But when she turned and saw the helicopter approaching, her stomach dropped. Something was seriously wrong. The real problem was only beginning. Back in the Queen's chamber, the Ant King stepped toward Jinwoo, confident in its victory. But before it could even land another blow, Jinwoo grabbed its arm mid-strike. The Ant King's mandibles clicked in shock. How? The poison should have immobilized him by now. Jinwoo didn't even flinch. His grip tightened, and without a word, he punched the Ant King so hard the ground cracked beneath them, sending the insect flying across the chamber. A notification popped up in Jinwoo's vision. You have been successfully detoxified. Oh, right. Poison resistance. He smirked, stretching his shoulders like he was just warming up. The Ant King had actually thought it won? How embarrassing. And then, Jinwoo felt something. Fear. From the Ant King. Oh yeah, it was scared. However, so were his teammates. They were starting to panic. He had to end this. Jinwoo dashed forward again, aiming to finish things once and for all. But the Ant King, now fully aware that brute strength wouldn't cut it, disappeared in an instant. Baek Yunho and Choi Jong-in scanned the battlefield, eyes wide. Where did it go? It just vanished. Meanwhile, the Ant King, now airborne, was thinking fast. Jinwoo had resisted its poison. Overpowering him wouldn't work. But there was something else. It wasn't just strong. It was fast. And if speed was its true strength, then that's what it would use. The Ant King compressed its massive body, channeling all of its energy into speed. Playtime's over. It launched forward, moving faster than it ever had before. But then it realized something terrifying. Jinwoo dodged. Not just dodged, disappeared. The Ant King barely had time to process before Jinwoo appeared behind it. Daggers charged with mana, swinging down. The Ant King blocked, barely, but its body was struggling to keep up. Jinwoo didn't stop. He kept attacking, faster and faster. The Ant King, now in pure survival mode, tried to counter, but it couldn't. Jinwoo was faster. Much faster. Desperation set in. This can't be real. He's not just keeping up. He's moving even faster than me. Jinwoo assessed the situation, his eyes sharp as ever. He had already leveled up after defeating the Demon King, his weapons were stronger, and most importantly, he had already cracked the Ant King's exoskeleton. This was the beginning of the end. His daggers became a blur, each strike precise, each attack carving deeper into the Ant King's body. The once mighty insect, who had been so confident just moments ago, could now do nothing but endure, its armor breaking apart piece by piece. And then Jinwoo saw it. An opening. Without hesitation, he activated critical attack. His blades flashed, cutting through vital weak points. The Ant King's movements slowed, not by choice, but because its body was failing it. It couldn't even react. Then, a notification popped up in Jinwoo's vision. New skill unlocked. Mutilate. Oh, now this sounded fun. The Ant King, realizing the situation was getting way too real, tried to retreat. Jinwoo tilted his head, mocking its cowardice. Where do you think you're going? And then, he activated Mutilate. In an instant, he unleashed a relentless flurry of slashes, each one tearing into the Ant King's exoskeleton like a hot knife through butter. Its body was coming apart. And then, for the finishing touch, Jinwoo sliced off one of its arms. Payback's a bitch. The Ant King let out an ear-piercing roar, staggering backward, finally realizing just how screwed it was. It started questioning every decision it had ever made. Did it ever really have a chance? But then, a new thought entered its head. Maybe it did. With its last sliver of hope, it let out another deafening roar, summoning a swarm of ants so massive the ground itself trembled beneath their approach. The chamber darkened as thousands of monstrous insects flooded in. The Ant King grinned. How's that, human? This dude really learned nothing. Jinwoo just smirked, unimpressed. He raised a hand, gave a simple command. Go! And just like that, his shadow army surged forward, meeting the ant swarm head-on. Jinwoo's shadow army clashed with the ant swarm, slicing through them like they were made of paper. But Jinwoo wasn't done. He needed more firepower. With a simple command, he summoned Tusk. And when that massive, fire-wreathed behemoth stepped out of the shadows, you just knew things were about to get serious. Jinwoo, knowing Tusk, gave him a simple order. Only attack the ants. If you hurt any of the humans, I won't summon you again. Tusk, ever the loyal beast, nodded in understanding. Then he got to work. With a deep, echoing roar, he activated Hymn of Giants followed by Hymn of the Fire Dragon. And just like that, a raging inferno consumed the battlefield. Ants melted, shrieked, and burned away as a gaping hole was blasted through their nest. The Japanese hunters watching from a distance were speechless. Struggling to comprehend what they were seeing, muttered, "Is that a summoned beast? He actually summoned something like that." Ma Dongwook wasn't having it. "No, that doesn't look like a beast. That looks like the devil himself just walked into our world." Meanwhile, the Ant King, who just moments ago was talking all that big game, was now watching its army get absolutely erased in a matter of seconds. And for the first time in its short, violent life, it felt fear. "I don't understand." It struggled to process what was happening. "I've always been the strongest. I devoured everything in my path. There is no limit to how powerful I can become. I am the king." It then started to think intelligently. "Oh boy, I need to dip." Jinwoo, however, wasn't going to let that happen. He immediately caught on. The Ant King had absorbed Min Byung-gu's healing ability. That explained why it suddenly had this crazy regeneration. It wasn't trying to run away. It was buying time to recover. Not on his watch. Jinwoo activated the commander's touch. The Ant King barely made it 2 steps before Jinwoo's invisible grip yanked it back like a misbehaving toddler. Then boom. Jinwoo slammed the oversized roach into the ground with enough force to shake the entire battlefield. The Ant King was done. It tried to run one last time. Jinwoo wasn't having it. He activated Mutilate. The Ant King didn't even have time to scream before it was torn to pieces. And just like that, it was over. A flood of notifications popped up. "You have defeated the enemy. Level up. Level up." Baek Yunho, barely able to comprehend what he just witnessed, shouted, "Mr. Sung!" But then, his eyes landed on Cha Hae-in's unconscious body. His expression turned to pure panic. Jinwoo immediately rushed over, heart pounding. He had wasted too much time. "Damn it," he muttered. She was getting weaker. Fast. His mind raced. Shadow exchange? No, that was still on cooldown. Kaisel? No, she wouldn't survive the flight while carrying an injured person. A healer? Maybe one of the Blade Guild hunters was still alive. There had to be a way. Then he figured something out. He turned and looked at the cameraman, who was still recording. Turn that off. The cameraman, confused, just blinked at him. Pardon. Jinwoo wasn't in the mood to ask twice. Hurry up. If you don't shut it off, I'm going to smash it to pieces. The poor guy nearly dropped his camera, trying to turn it off. Okay, it's off. It's off. He gulped, thinking to himself. What the hell is he about to do? Jinwoo turned to his shadows. Go find Min Byung-gu's body. Baek Yunho's breath hitched. Min Byung-gu's body? But his head was. He cut himself off. A terrifying thought entered his mind. No way is he going to try that. The shadows returned, carrying what was left of Min Byung-gu. Baek Yunho, watching Jinwoo's expression, had a bad feeling. Mr. Sung, what exactly are you trying to do? Jinwoo barely acknowledged him. A notification appeared in front of him. Shadow extraction may be used on this target. Thank God. Jinwoo took a breath. This was his only shot. Arise. Nothing. The extraction failed. He tried again. Still nothing. Jinwoo clenched his fists. This should have worked. His skill level was more than high enough for this kind of extraction. So why wasn't it working? And then it hit him. Min Byung-gu didn't want to come back. Even in death, his will was too strong. Jinwoo looked over at Cha Hae-in. Her breathing was growing weaker. He had no choice. He tried one last time. Arise. And this time, it worked. Baek Yunho immediately grabbed Jinwoo by the shoulder. Mr. Sung, what have you done to Byung-gu? Min Byung-gu, formerly one of Korea's greatest S-rank healers, now stood before them as a shadow soldier. And Baek Yunho? He finally understood just how terrifying Sung Jinwoo really was. Does he have the power to command the dead? Choi Jong-in, still trying to process what he just witnessed, looked at Jinwoo with an expression of disbelief. You can harness the powers of the dead? He muttered. You're no ordinary summoner, that's for sure. The answer to that question was standing right in front of them. Min Byung-gu's shadow, now an undead version of Korea's greatest healer, silently walked over to Cha Hae-in and began healing her. Baek Yunho, his emotions completely all over the place, watched as his fallen friend, no, the thing that used to be his friend, cast his healing spells over Cha Hae-in's unconscious body. Is Byung-gu healing her? His voice barely above a whisper. Jinwoo didn't even have to command him. Min Byung-gu's shadow had started healing her on his own. Even in death, his will remained the same. Baek Yunho still had his hand on Jinwoo's shoulder. This time, there was no hostility. He wasn't accusing, wasn't demanding, he was pleading. That thing, he said, voice heavy with emotion. That's no longer Byung-gu. Jinwoo nodded. You're right. The cameraman, standing a few steps away, was just straight up speechless. The dude had seen some crazy shit in his time, but this was something else entirely. He can summon the dead, he thought, his hands trembling as he gripped his camera. I get why he told me to turn off the recording now. There's no way the public can know about this. Meanwhile, Choi Jong-in was staring at Jinwoo like he was looking at something that shouldn't exist. The more the battle rages on, the more powerful he becomes, he realized. What a terrifying ability. Baek Yunho, still holding on to Jinwoo, spoke again, this time making a request instead of a demand. You're going to fight in many more battles from now on, he said. And I know Byung-gu's abilities would be a huge advantage for you. But he hated violence. So please, don't make him fight on the battlefield again. Jinwoo could tell that Baek Yunho meant it. This wasn't some empty plea. This was a friend asking for mercy. Jinwoo sighed. That's the second time you've grabbed me by the shoulder, Mr. Baek. He paused. But this time, you're not giving me an order. I can tell you're making a heartfelt request. And honestly, Jinwoo agreed. He took one last look at Min Byung-gu's shadow. Then, with a quiet terminate extraction, the shadow dissipated into thin air. Baek Yunho, despite himself, felt his throat tighten. Watching his friend disappear a second time hit different. He looked at Jinwoo, the smallest trace of gratitude in his expression. Thank you, he said. A helicopter arrived overhead. The hunters have returned, came a voice over the radio. Jinwoo, however, wasn't done yet. I'm staying behind, he said. Baek Yunho blinked. Sorry, I still have some unfinished business to take care of, Jinwoo explained. Baek Yunho hesitated for a second. Then, with a deep breath, he nodded. That's true. This raid isn't over yet. Jinwoo smirked. I'll clear the path and get rid of the remaining ants. Summoning Kaisel, he gave one final nod to Baek Yunho before launching himself into the sky, leaving a trail of destruction in his wake as he tore through any remaining ants like it was a side quest. Meanwhile, back on the Japanese destroyer, things were not looking great. Hoshino Minoru sat on the floor, trembling. He hadn't recovered. Not from what he saw. Not from the absolute nightmare that was the Ant King. That thing, he mumbled. That thing was a monster. You guys didn't see it. You didn't see how it killed Goto. You don't understand. We can't win. Nobody in the world can defeat something like that. Reiji Sugimoto, standing nearby, gave him a very unimpressed look. Stop your worrying, he said flatly. The Jeju Island Raid has already ended. Minoru's blood ran cold. What? Ishida Mari confirmed it. We just received word from the South Korean headquarters. It's true. As they spoke, Sugimoto remembered something. A conversation he had with Goto the night before the raid. Mr. Sugimoto, Goto had said. It turns out there is a pretty skilled hunter here in South Korea. Sugimoto had laughed at the time. Haha, but surely not as strong as you, Mr. Goto. But Goto had looked unsure. Well, I'm not so sure about that, he had muttered. And then, he had given Sugimoto a name. Sung Jinwoo. Back in the nest, Jinwoo was cleaning up. He wiped out the remaining eggs with ease, collecting EXP like he was grinding mobs in a game. Looks like I get experience points for destroying unhatched ants, too, he mused. That's a lucky bonus. Opening his inventory, he saw something he completely forgot about. The Night Killer longsword. Huh, I forgot I had this, he muttered. He drew the weapon, giving it a test swing. Sparks of electric energy crackled across the blade. Whoa, he grinned. Yeah, this one's gonna be fun. Meanwhile, in the United States, David Brennan, director of the Federal Bureau of Hunters, sat in his office, watching a screen. What do you make of this, Mr. Brennan? Asked Michael Connor, standing nearby. Brennan rubbed his chin. Well, I watched the videos. Didn't realize how much time had passed. It's already past 4 in the morning. Connor pressed him. A hunter that can summon and command over 100 beasts. He's truly one of a kind, sir. I think it'd be a shame to let such talent go to waste. South Korea is too small for him. Brennan sighed. I agree. Do you know anything else about him? Connor handed him a file. This file contains details about the explosion at the Bureau a couple of months ago, otherwise known as the Sung Il-hwan incident. Brennan's expression darkened. Connor continued. Sung Il-hwan was captured inside an A-rank gate on the East Coast. At first, we weren't sure if he was a human or a magic beast, but he claimed to be a hunter from South Korea. Then, Connor hit him with the real bombshell. Turns out, he's Sung Jinwoo's father. Brennan's eyebrows shot up. Connor smirked. We have a perfect opportunity here, sir. As of now, no other country even knows Sung Jinwoo's name. Brennan hesitated. If we do this, we can't repeat what we did with Hwang Dong-soo. South Korea's been an ally for a long time. Taking another S-rank from them would be a slap in the face. Connor just smiled. But Sung Jinwoo would be worth the risk, wouldn't he? Brennan sighed. You sure you can do this? Connor's smirk widened. I'll give it my best shot. Back on Jeju Island, Jinwoo levels up. Jinwoo hits level 100, but there's no time to celebrate. His gaze shifts to the remains of the Ant King, and something about it feels different. The corpse isn't just lying there. It's radiating energy, dark flares pulsing from its form like a lingering grudge refusing to fade. This one seems unusually troubled, Jinwoo mutters. He raises a hand and gives the command. Arise. The moment the words leave his mouth, everything goes black. Jinwoo is completely engulfed in darkness, a void so deep and consuming that for a split second, he wonders what's happening. Why is it so dark? I can't feel anything, he thinks. Is this happening because I tried extracting its shadow? Or did the extraction fail? Then a voice cuts through the void. Ah, and I'm back. The darkness shatters like broken glass. Jinwoo turns and smiles. Standing before him, wreathed in dense, pulsating shadow, is his strongest summon yet. Rank General. The same hulking menace that terrorized an entire island of elite hunters, that tore through Japan's best, that stood above all other ants as their king. Except now? Now, he stands before his true king. Jinwoo stares at the Ant King's shadow, intrigued. General, that's a new one. Up until now, his soldiers ranked as standard, elite knight, and elite knight, but this was something else entirely. Given how much of a menace this guy was when he was alive, it made sense that his shadow would be on a different level. As he's about to extract the Ant Queen's shadow, the kneeling Ant King suddenly speaks, its deep voice filled with reverence. "My king, please give me a name." Jinwoo raises an eyebrow. This guy can talk. That was new. He had never heard any of his other shadows speak before. Even Iron, Tusk, or Min Byung-gu remained silent despite being former humans. Was this because of its rank? Maybe higher-tier shadows retained some of their old abilities. Jinwoo tests the waters. "How can you talk?" The shadow doesn't hesitate. "I always could." That confirmed his suspicion. The real question was, "Even though I'm the one who killed you, you still want to follow me?" The Ant King, without missing a beat, bows deeper. "Master, you did not kill me. It was through your powers that I was reborn. Happiness overflows within me. I shall follow you for eternity." All right then. This dude was committed. He deserved a name. Jinwoo smirks, thinking back to a book called The Ants by Bernard Werber. "Your name is Baru." The shadow straightens, repeating it proudly. "Baru, my name is Baru." "Thank you, my king." With that settled, Jinwoo turns to the Ant Queen. "All right, now let's see if she's got anything useful." "Arise." The queen's shadow emerges, but something feels off. Immediately, Jinwoo notices that the bond between him and his ants has weakened. That's when Baru speaks up. The queen holds dominion over the colony. She will command them as long as she exists. So that's how it was. Jinwoo frowns. He doesn't need two commanders in his army, especially not one that could mess with his control. He also realizes her mana levels are abnormally low for her rank. Why does she have such little mana? Baru, ever the info dump, replies. Her mana was used for reproduction. Now that she has no body to reproduce, she has little left to offer. Oh, so she was basically useless. No thanks. Terminate extraction. The queen's shadow dissipates instantly, and Jinwoo moves on to more pressing matters. His shadows have already begun collecting essence stones from the fallen ants, but he stops them. Leave them. These are going to be used to rebuild Jeju Island and compensate for the damages. As he eyes the mana stone from Baru's corpse, he figures this one alone is more than enough for me. But the real problem now, the remaining ants. Can I wipe them out with my current numbers? Baru, as if reading his mind, kneels again. I can feel it, my king. Our enemies struggle in the skies. Without a leader, they scatter in confusion. Jinwoo folds his arms. How many are left? Before the attack, there were 8,700. Approximately 4,000 remain, my king. 4,000? That was still a lot of ants. He really thought he wiped out a good chunk, but it seemed like there was still plenty left to deal with. He turns to Baru. Can you handle the rest? Without hesitation, Baru bows. If you command it, master. Meanwhile, the ants that fled the island are now on a direct course for the mainland. Guild members stationed on the battleships see them approaching fast. The ants are flying straight for us. Immediately, the fleet opens fire. Heavy artillery and magic barges light up the sky, taking down dozens of ants at a time, but there are just too many. The hunters on board the ships brace themselves. Everyone get into formation. If we lose formation, we're dead. One of the A-rank hunters starts shaking. We're actually supposed to fight these things. There's too many of them. Another hunter scoffs. This guy's an A-rank? What a coward. Panic starts to set in as the ants break through the bombardment, closing in on the ships at terrifying speed. They're already at Houndy Beach. We don't have enough firepower to stop them. Just as it looks like all hope is lost. Boom. A blur cuts through the sky. Ants drop by the dozens, sliced apart in an instant. The hunters, completely dumbfounded, struggle to even comprehend what they're seeing. What the hell? What just killed those ants? The air crackles with energy as the hunters spot a figure moving faster than their eyes can track. A black shadow. No, not just any shadow. This was a monster among monsters. Baru has entered the battlefield. And just like that, Baru went from talking smack to pledging loyalty to our shadow monarch. What do you guys think? Is Baru your favorite shadow? Let me know who's your favorite down in the comments. And the ultimate question, who would win in a fight between Baru, Tusk, and Igris? Drop your takes in the comments. Also, if you're loving these solo leveling recaps, hit subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next legendary fight. More fire content coming soon.